Story 1. Hanging in there is my go-to response. If they ask how is it going, I use the tired it's going response. Usually nips any further questions in the bud immediately because nobody actually wants to burden themselves with hearing other people's problems when they have their own to deal with. Story 2. If it's an adult, I could admit, I seriously want this month to be over. If it's one of my lovely kids, I'll say, looking forward to Christmas, love, because they don't need to suffer just because I'm a tired single mom. Story 3. If a client asks and I've known them for a while, I'll say, I'm okay. I'm kind of tired and stressed, but I'll make it. If I haven't known them for a while, I'll say, I'm great. How are you? If it's my wife, I'll tell her the truth and complain if the kids aren't within earshot. If it's one of my kids, I'll say, why are you asking, you nosy little squirt? And tickle chase him or her into the next room, neatly dodging the question. Story 4. I unload the full spectrum of my emotional issues upon them like I'm firing a full clip of a submachine gun into a therapist. That way, they get conditioned not to ask a question they don't want an answer to. Story 5. I asked an acquaintance how he was, and he told me he was having a tough time. It was refreshing to hear the truth, and it opened our relationship into something more. We are really good friends now. Story 6. Common responses from coworkers include upright and breathing, I'm here, few more hours, I'm Monday and peachy. Then the information technology guy always says miserable, but with the tone of voice that you might use to say pretty good. Story 7. If they hit you up checking in, be honest. That's why they are hitting you up. If it's a casual, how are you? Tell them you are having an alright day but making the best of it, or not letting it drag you down. You are being honest yet positive at the same time, and people love you for that. Story 8. Act briefly distracted by something happening behind them, then focus back on them, pretending you didn't hear the question, followed by a quick, so, how are you? Story 9. I'll lie and say, I'm fine. I'm tired of people asking me to open up, just to blame and judge me when I do open up, saying that it's my fault. So I'd rather handle the problem myself. Story 10. I always say, I'm all right, and then politely ask them how they are. People love to talk about themselves, so I can take cover behind their verbal rambling. Story 11. I tell them I'm having a tough day. I'm not interested in making anyone comfortable. If they ask, I will answer honestly. If they do not want a real answer, then they should not ask. Story 12. It depends on if I'm willing to go further into it with the person who is asking. If I don't, a simple it's going usually implies not great but doesn't need further explanation. If I do, I'll say, well, I've had better days, and possibly go into why. 99% of the time, I don't like to talk about a tough day until it's over. Story 13. Oh, death would be a release from this travesty. How about yourself? Gotta say it real chipper so it comes off as a joke instead of a cry for help. Story 14. My boss is mean, my life feels difficult, and I sometimes struggle with my thoughts. How is your day? Note. I am not married, retired, and love my life. I just strongly dislike small talk. Story 15. Highly depends. Client. I'm doing great. How are you? Friend. I've had better days, but I'm okay. Family. It's not a great day, but all things considered, I'm doing okay. Story 16. Whenever I have a tough day, I don't show it to anyone, not friends or family. I keep it to myself. So when someone asks, how are you? I usually tell them, I'm okay and doing good, with a little smile. Story 17. You could say something like, I'm hanging in there. Thanks for asking. Or, it's been a tough day, but I'm managing. It's okay to be honest, but you don't have to go into detail unless you're comfortable. Story 18. I always respond in an ambiguous way, whether I'm doing well or doing poorly, sort of in the line of, I'm all right. If that person is ready to hear about my potential bad day, then they will probably question me further. If not, we can leave it at that. I'm all right. Story 19. I just lie and say, good. Most people these days seem to use it as a greeting instead of hi or hello and say, how are you doing? While walking away, not even waiting for a response anyway. Story 20. Close friend? I'll be honest and try to explain what's bothering me. Someone I'm not very close with? I lie and say I'm fine. They're just being polite by asking and aren't expecting anything other than, I'm good. How about you? Story 21. I say that I'm doing the best I can given the situation and then try to move on to something else. If they ask for details, I will lightly talk about it if I know them well enough. If I don't, I just say it's personal stuff and move on. Story 22. I'm normally honest with people when they ask, even if it's a semi-truth. If there's someone I'm close to, I'll say, not too great, but I'll be fine. And if it's someone that I don't really know, I just say, I've been better. Story 23. I have a chronic illness that can result in really debilitating flare-ups. When someone asks me how I'm doing, I say can't complain, because I don't like to bring people down over something they have no control over. They usually take it positively even if I mean it a little more literally. Story 24. It depends on who it is. If it is a good friend, then I am upfront about it. If it is a casual acquaintance, then I take the fake it until you make it approach. Story 25. Not well, I have been better. If they continue to inquire, then they are sincere. If they dismiss you by saying sorry to hear and say nothing more, they don't really want to know. Story 26. In the United States, unless it's your partner or close friend, in the context of a conversation, the phrase, how are you doing, is much more of a greeting than a question. It's not really different from saying hello. As such, a response of fine yourself is pretty much an automatic response for me. Story 27. Ah, can't complain. How are you? I say this a lot at work, especially because I literally cannot complain about my life because it would be unprofessional. Also, in general, I cannot complain because I would never stop. Then there would be tears, and that's just awkward for everyone really. Story 28. It depends on the person. If it is not someone you are very close to, it is usually better to respond with good. However, if the person is close to you, it may be better to be honest about your feelings and situation, as they may offer empathy and support. Story 29. Depends on who is asking. Random acquaintance or coworker. I'm good. Close friend or family. The truth. Client or coworker. You have to be wary of whatever suits the current goals. Story 30. Depends on who is asking and where I am at with my bad day. If it's just part of a greeting, then I say great, fantastic, living the dream, happy to be here, surviving, all in hopefully lighthearted tones. If it's a close friend, then maybe a little different even if part of a greeting, but depends on the nature of the bad day. Dealing with my year-long depression, probably similar to above. Just a random rough day that isn't too emotionally vulnerable to talk about. Maybe just vent a bit about whatever stupid thing. If the close friend is actually asking how I'm doing and not just a greeting, then it all depends on how much I'm willing to talk about. I'll be more honest about it, but looking back, I see even then I keep it pretty surface level and usually only about things I'm not actively emotionally vulnerable about or too much in the middle of dealing with. I can open up about things I've sorted out or moved a little past a lot easier than anything I'm actively dealing with, so you are probably going to get more of a story of how I felt last week or month or whatever, which I'm likely not fully over, so it will still be helpful and we can both bond over that a bit, which is emotionally safer for me. Story 31. I usually say, I'm fine, well, not really, but let's not go into that. Nobody is really interested in that. The other person usually laughs and agrees. It's a small moment where both parties are honest and also absolved from social constraints. Story 32. You say you're fine because no one actually cares if you aren't. It's just something people say as a greeting. The few people who might actually care are going to know you aren't fine without having to say it. Story 33. I always just say, doing good. How about you? No matter how I'm actually doing. I always just say this line. I know at the end of the day it doesn't matter, so I don't bother. Story 34. I typically will be honest in my reply. Depending on who is asking, my reply will vary, mostly if I want to elaborate or not. But in general, I choose not to lie. Story 35. Depends on the person. Random acquaintance? Just say I'm fine. Don't even bring up what's bothering me. Close friend or family member, and we are in a private setting? I will probably open up a bit more. Story 36. Depends on who they are. A real friend? Not so great. I'm getting sick. Really behind at work. Feeling burned out. A coworker who is not a friend. I'm okay. Can't wait for this deadline to be behind us. How about you? Story 37. I'm here. Which is to say that I dragged myself out of bed, didn't call in sick, and am doing the best I can in my current circumstances. I've been trying to stop lying about it, because otherwise my invisible disabilities stay invisible. I don't want to make it a focal point, but I also don't help myself by hiding it from people who care about me. Story 38. It's been a day, is what I usually say. That way they can choose to just say, oh sorry, that sucks. Or they can ask for more information if they have the time or willingness to listen, and I happily tell them to get things off my mind. Story 39. If you want them to know the truth but do not want to come off as whining, just tell them you are fine. Telling them that you are fine is a sure sign that, in fact, you are not fine. Story 40. You walk out the door and you see someone you know and they ask you how you are and you just have to say you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand. Story 41. I say, the honest answer to that question is that I'm not good at the moment, but I will be. I've learned that anything along the lines of hanging in there dismisses and makes light of how I'm feeling and is usually said to make the listener not feel uncomfortable. Story 42. I always say I'm all right or I'm okay because I am. No matter how tough a day I'm having, I know I've been through worse and I'm going to be okay. Then I'll ask them how they are doing, and I always genuinely mean it, just as I assume they did. I didn't realize until Reddit that people say it just to say it and not actually care about the response. Story 43. I unfortunately bottle that inside. I feel like we live in a society where, by being honest, it could be a burden to others. I'll grit my teeth, smile, and say I'm doing okay. If they ask more, I may crack and tell them no, but I'm trying to be in a good mood. Sometimes, even though I feel bad and bottle it, if I try to stay positive, it can have a ripple effect on others. Story 44. I lie or I tell a joke because they do not care and it is just a surface-level question and an annoying social interaction. I do not want to be asked and they do not want to know. Story 45. I am an honest person, and I hate that asking, "How are you?" has become performative. I will say honestly, it's been a day, but it's getting better, so that they are not in the awkward position of feeling like they have to ask follow-up questions or cheer me up. But it does advise proceeding with caution. It has been a day. I find most people find authenticity refreshing, and I feel better for not lying. Story 46. Up until recently, I would get hung up on that phrase. I work in a place where you have many surface-level interactions, which shifted my outlook. My guess is that phonetically, "How are you?" sounds better and seems more informal than hello. Now, I respond with "I'm fine" to virtually everyone unless it's someone I have a good rapport with. I still think it's silly, but I don't worry about it. Story 47. Unless you want to talk about it with them, the polite thing to do is just say that you are fine. I recently learned that telling someone you are not doing well, but not being willing to talk about it usually makes them uncomfortable. Story 48. I say I'm fine and go on with my life if it's anyone other than a close friend or my parents. I'll open up to them. I don't need to destroy anyone else's life by explaining I'm having a breakdown because I couldn't find the pants I wanted to wear. Story 49. I say I'm fine and go on with my life if it's anyone other than a close friend or my parents. I will open up to them. I don't need to destroy anyone else's life by explaining I'm having a breakdown because I couldn't find the pants I wanted to wear. Story 50. I used to tell the truth. But I've found out over the years most people ask the question and hope to God that the response is anything that doesn't require a follow-up question. Unless it's a good friend that you know will have the patience to listen, just say fine, great, blessed, and let that person move on. Story 51. I have been doing well. How about you? If I am being honest, whenever someone asks that question, they just hope you say you are good, so they do not have to listen to all that. You might as well say you are good and get it over with. Story 52. I say I'm okay because most don't care, but only ask because they feel it's socially required. To be honest, most times I don't care about others' status, but I also don't ask how they're doing either. Story 53. My response usually depends on who is doing the asking. Family, friends, and whoever else in my close circle will get the honest answer. Everybody else will get the "I'm good." And you? Story 54. I always say surviving because I don't like to lie, and when asked why, I either say simply or leave it. As many times it is strangers asking. I really want a bonding over such a deep thing. Story 55. Honestly, crazy I know, but why lie? Pretending everything is fine leads to depression and worse. Be yourself. If they didn't want the truth, they shouldn't have asked. Story 56. My wife's a pain in the ass. She's always busting my frigging agates. My daughter's married to a loser bastard, and I have a rash so bad on my ass, I can't even sit down. But you know me. I can't complain. Story 57. In Germany, you just say muss or get. It has to, or it goes. While in English these translations don't make sense, in German it's not meant literally. It's more of an acknowledgement. I know you're asking out of politeness and I'm not particularly good, but I don't want to get into it, is actually what it basically means, all encapsulated into one word. But you can also say skice. I'm doing poorly, and people won't be offended. Sometimes you're just having a bad day. That's how it is. Story 58. I am surviving. Thanks for asking. How are you? You have to keep in mind that their day may be worse, and they are looking for a little support from others, even if it is just letting them know they are not alone in their struggles. So I keep it real and simple. Let them know my day is not all sunshine and rainbows without adding to their troubles. I cannot recall the last time my day was anywhere near sunshine and rainbows. So much so that I have adjusted what all sunshine and rainbows would be, but that is for other subreddits.